Welcome to Conversations with the Authors.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the final episode of Conversations with the Authors, at least in this space, in this time, at this transitional stage. I'd like to thank you for pressing the play button. As always, I'd like to thank Alexander Nakarada for the intro that he supplies to the podcast. And I'd like to thank one of our co-executive producer, Sam Yeomans, Yeomans Production, for his help and co-editing and everything else he does to help us keep this machine going. With me always are my parents. I'm Daniel.
I'm Daryl.
I'm Sandra.
And they are the co-writers of the highly rated, Eric Hoffer nominated sci-fi fantasy novel, How Nicholas Became Santa Claus. So, Daryl, Sandy, we're going to take a look back today and just sort of reflect. And the first, we're going to go back and listen to a couple sound bites that I prepared. One with Chico Marin, who was one of our super fans, who gave us the impression of her book, and we'll hear what she has to say.
Chico, there was a lot of magic in the book. How'd you like that?
I actually liked it a lot because I do love those type of books, so this was perfect for me. And I was actually going to ask you and Sandra, what inspired you guys to write the book about how Nicholas became Santa Claus?
Well, he never had really a backstory, and my wife has been fiddling with that for years and years. Tell her.
I have been fiddling that since the day our children were born in early 1979, and I was hoping to use the magic in the book to show the kids that no matter what you have to overcome, with a little bit of ingenuity and imagination, you could overcome anything.
So when she came to me years later, she had about 10 pages that she wrote, and I was writing something else. And I looked at it and I said, this is really good. I like this. I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. I'm going to take those 10 pages with you, and we're going to blow it up into a full-size book. So we got together and we started writing, and every time she wrote something, when I came home from work, I read it. I said, now it's time to blow that up into multiple pages.
That was such a fun interview with having them sort of super fans take the mic and ask you questions. And
it was. I think that's some of the most exciting interviewing.
Oh, yeah.
And when we have the guest, I always enjoyed that.
It's one of my favorite parts because since I write from home and I don't go out and I don't get into conversations with people outside of the house, that was really great for me having some kind of
I thought it would be. I saw your face light
up.
input. And speaking of exciting interviews and sort of letting the audience, our readers take the mic, we had another super fan interview with Ernie, and he helped along with the book earlier in your development, and he gave us a little super fans interview as well.
Oh, yes.
How Nicholas Became Santa Claus is a really good book, no question about that. But they don't know the story; they just know the book. They don't know the story in writing the book. That is why I would like to ask this question.
The story behind writing the book.
Yeah, what inspired you to write a science fiction specifically about Santa Claus?
For me, I think my wife actually inspired me because she came up with the storyline. But there were a lot of questions. There always is a lot of questions about where this stellar human being came from. And so we needed a backstory. And we were so excited about putting this backstory together. My wife had a lot of ideas. She gave me a lot of ideas. And we wanted to make this work, and we wanted to show where he came from. There's been so many stories written about Santa Claus. We thought we'd write something about Nicholas, how he became that. And Nicholas needed a story.
Ernie had a great point when he asked. He said, why why not Vikings? You could write about anything. Why this realm? Why science fiction? Why high fantasy? Why how Nicholas became Santa Claus? And Daryl, you had such a great point in your response, being that it was not about Santa Claus.
Not about Santa Claus, no. It's about Nicholas.
It's about Nicholas. It's his story. We already know Santa Claus.
Mm-hmm. You know? It's Nicholas and how he came to be, who we all know. Right. And he had a life that he lived, and he had troubles that he had to negotiate, and he had love that he had to negotiate. So
and also too, as you're pointing out, he was, for all intents and purposes, a real person.
Yeah, and he lived in this fantastic and fantasy world, but he still had the same types of feelings and wonderings we had.
And as we've talked about often through this podcast, your story needs to resonate. And I think that's what resonates with this. And why you took the slightest bit of reality with St. Nicholas, in the beginning. The rest of it is all fantasy and amazing.
Yeah, but
that realism, that human standpoint.
And I emphasize again that he wasn't Santa Claus, and he wasn't a saint then. Absolutely. He was just a kid.
Right. And I think that's what makes this great. And also, we did another. Not only did we have super fans on the show, but we also had some special guests who had specialties. We had Master of Psychology. We had a PhD in psychology. Brother Daryl and Marina, my sister, with the master's, my brother with the PhD, and then we had a Master of Education in Nicole Ross, and she came on and talked about the importance of reading and why story time is so important. And I think, it's important for anybody who's really watched a great movie or played a great video game, loves a good story. And I think Nicole made a really great point and sort of expressing the facts that go behind that.
I like to say to people that I see a lot of children as a psychiatrist, but I tell my adults that all the children I ever saw, all the adults I ever saw, rather, had been children.
Yeah.
So you want to start things as young as and early as possible.
Right. But we were talking earlier outside of the recording about reading, and we were talking about story time. Mm-hmm. And story time isn't just for
small children. Mm-hmm. It is said that story time is effective all the way into adulthood. And it's a shame that we stop doing that after children hit a certain age and they're still very much minors, because story time stimulates the brain.
Right.
It helps your comprehension, your memory.
Yes.
It piques your imagination. And then depending on the topic, typically stories pose a problem.
Right.
So you have to use your mind to analyze and solve this problem, especially if it's something like sci-fi or mystery or anything of the like, romance even. Right. It's like, oh, what am I going to do about this person who did this thing? Or it could be something relatable to life. And so they can take that story and then they start connecting dots to what they're going through as well.
And that is where, as you heard in the clip, I think Nicole Ross made a great point. Sandy, when you wrote Nicholas, you hit all these points. You hit, problems they'd have to deal with growing up. You hit romance. You hit, having to deal with situations. Daryl, you got into serious topics.
Yes.
And dealing with like death and dealing with, betrayal and all these sorts of things that, you normally don't expect kids to have to read about in story time, but as Nicole said in her piece, the story time is beneficial for everybody.
Yeah, sure. And I wanted to kind of make a U-turn too, all the way back. We talked about AI and the future, but I want to make a U-turn and let you know that we've been telling stories since we lived in caves. Whether it was cave art or oral traditions and rituals and ceremonies, they were all stories, and they had meaning, and it gave meaning to our surrounding and environment.
And how important was it for you that how Nicholas became Santa Claus was a story for everybody?
Extremely.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely.
And did you start out with that? Like, this has to be a story that everybody can read.
Yes.
Well, yeah, we wanted to be accessible to everyone. We wanted everyone to be able to enjoy the adventure.
Yes.
And it was an adventure.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted it to be a book that parents could read to the little ones, that the little ones could pick up and read when they got older, that the older ones could pick up and read to their little ones.
Yeah.
Something
generational
exciting, you know, that
story,
I wanted to have a roller coaster here that we could ride, and we could experience the highs and the lows and the fantastic beings that appeared.
And speaking of fantastic beings, Nicholas is not just one story. Nicholas is a whole universe. And you have these branch stories that you guys are working on, right? That are not
that's
just
true.
Yes.
For Nicholas, it's a living, breathing world. You guys did a wonderful, job in creating this living, breathing universe. And you have to wonder sometimes, can AI do this? And we talked about this a little bit in one of our previous podcasts called Writers versus Machines. And we talked with my brother, who was a PhD, but also an enthusiast in AI technology, and sort of how this is affecting us. And Daryl, you sort of also jumped in the fray with how traditional writers are best, and here's why. So I'm just going to play that clip for you. And just to remind you, just so you know, the clip is a little funky sounding because my brother's voice happens to be so low. We had to play with levels a lot to get it to work. Daryl, are they going to take us over? Is and I mean that by, do you think AI is going to, in the words of South Park, take our jobs?
There is an instance where there are some simple jobs that might be able to be replaced by AI, such as some online, facilitation, such as, paper checking or essay writing and things of that nature. But it is going to be a substitute for the human brain, because the information that you get from AI is going to be essentially just like computers were or calculators are. It's garbage in, garbage out. If you don't tell it exactly what you want in a very descriptive way, you're not going to get a very specific answer.
Like garbage in, garbage out. Senior Daryl.
Yes.
I can plug into ChatGPT. This is a common chat bot that's trending nowadays. Describe a samurai for me and give me a backstory. Okay, and I will do that. So why should I, forego automating my stories and really do as you do and, put the pencil to the paper and, really develop these characters?
I think really when you're asking a machine to imitate a human and give you a story, like we said in the beginning, there's no heart to it. It's just cold words. And you can never at this point have a machine give you its hard life story, like you said, and bring a tear to your eye or, any warmth to your heart. It's just something that it can't experience. It's not sentient, it's not aware of itself. They're still doing a lot of experimentation, to see if humans are the only creatures that are aware of themselves. And they found that other animals are. So you can throw a piece of tape on an elephant's head, show him a mirror, and he'll take his trunk and try to take it off because he knows he's in the world.
But Sandy, does that mean that I can't use AI to help me develop a story, a character, a scene, or what have you?
No, absolutely not. Because one thing I use it as a tool to test my character or my idea of what I want to do in the particular scene.
And this is new.
when we wrote our book, there was no such thing as an AI that you could really get a hold of and do anything. This was all from our hearts.
Right.
So you can test ideas. It's a tool. It's like a hammer. It's like a chisel or any other kind of tool. And so a tool can't build a house. Right. Only a human can.
So we're getting deep into it with AI and creativity, but I always think it's important, as I said before, to put the pencil to the paper and make things happen. Are there any final thoughts in your heads around this last 4 minutes or so?
I was listening to the news today, and they had an article in there about children who have learning difficulties, being grade school, high school, going to nursing homes, going to hospitals, and reading to people with dementias. And they found that in those patients that were read to, those patients began to use language again. And also, they had less memory loss and were more compliant in their treatment.
It makes sense.
Right. And
it does.
And it does, and it harkens back to what Nicole Ross was saying in the earlier script. And
about reading and stories being important at any age, whether you're a child or an adult.
Yeah, I really enjoyed doing this podcast for as long as we did. I think it's about 56 episodes, if I'm not mistaken.
Hate to see it go. I need some tissue.
And I always enjoy sharing the book, which you can find on our Facebook page at Troop Books, and you can find on our Instagram at Troop Books, and our X at Troop Books, and our Threads at Troop Books, where you can find a link to the Ewing's publisher page, and you can pick up a hardcover or a soft cover. But I think what's most important, dear listeners, is as we reach the end of our podcast journey, that we're filled with gratitude for the opportunity to share this passion for writing with you, and from exploring our passion for writing from the depths of world building to delving into the nuances of character development. Each episode has been a journey of discovery and growth. We've laughed, we've learned, we've connected with our fellow writers and storytellers from around the world. And as we bid farewell to this chapter, at least, we carry with us the memories of insightful conversation and the camaraderie of sharing these experiences, and the inspiration to continue on our creative pursuits. And that means you too. And along the way, we've shared insights and tips and experiences drawn from our own writing journey, particularly as Daryl and Sandra shared their process of crafting their sci-fi fantasy novel, How Nicholas Became Santa Claus. And we hope that our discussions have inspired and empowered you in your own creative endeavors. Remember, the journey of writing is as diverse and unique as the stories we tell. Thank you for being a part of our podcast community. May your writing journey be filled with endless possibilities and boundless imagination. Until we meet again, somewhere, somehow, keep writing, keep dreaming, and keep believing in the power of storytelling. Farewell, and thank you for being part of our conversations with the authors.
Absolutely.
I mean, goodbye, good luck, and may the good Lord take a liking to you. I think Red Skelton used to say that.
Don't forget to play. Let your memory play in your head. Let the stories begin. Make your own stories, make your own memories, make your own worlds, and most importantly, never forget to share them.
Yes. Well, thank you, dear listeners and readers, and farewell.